Morning, everyone. It's 8:06 here this morning in Brossard on this 7th of March 2019. Big bright sunny day with a white sun. Still don't know why the sun is white now. If I recall in my youth, the sun was more yellowish than this orange. And for the Nibiru naysayer, still nothing beside the sun. And I still don't get why would they see Nibiru beside the sun on the south of this planet instead of the north like us. I think we see the sun in the same direction for everyone, and I don't think it's about 6,000 kilometers that makes much of a difference. So I'm quite perplexed about this concept. And most of the time when you aim a camera at the sun, you will have what we call lens flare, which is refractal reflections of the light displaced, because it's not a camera per se, it's a digital camera. If you use a real an old classic film camera, you would probably see less lens flare, but you would still see lens flare. It wouldn't be as bad as with a camera phone, with using a CCD. But I still have a lot of problem believing in that. I wouldn't let it pass, you know. I would say, yeah, it's possible, and yeah, it might be that Nibiru or Planet X is over there and it's coming our way, because most of what's going on right now on Earth, all those earthquake and climatic change, are due to gravity strain on our planet. What is causing that gravity strain? I would do say that the sun activity does affect us. Oh my god, the gas went up again, for crying out loud. The good days of having low prices gone. We're going back in the 120s. Anyways, like I was saying, gravity is pulling on our planet, creating all the sorts of climatic mess on this planet. Anyway, the topic of the video today is not about talking about the planet or shit like this. The topic of the video today is to talk about gravity. What holds us here? And how could we beat gravity to create a transport that would defy gravity, like in Star Wars or Star Trek? And these two science fiction movies, they use two different gravity devices. Of course, it's science fiction, but Star Wars and Star Trek, they have an exploded view of their device on certain books, and the mechanic of how it works, and it makes somewhat sense. A lot of these things don't exist per se, or they could eventually exist with today's science, but for the moment, what we have right now, how could we make anti-gravity or magnetic repulsion? The thing is, if you build magnetic repulsion, you can only use it to a certain height. It will not propel you, it's just gonna repulse you from the ground. If you use anti-gravity, anti-gravity could propulse you up and away in the stars, because all it does is propulse, it detaches you from any gravity. Anti-gravity, it says anti-gravity, it detaches you from every gravity. So basically, the moment you activate it, you leave the ground in any direction. And if you don't want to end up in space, where there is no gravity, much gravity, then you would need a solid propulsion in space. And this is where mankind is still baffled, because we're using ion propulsions, solid fuel propulsion, and all these kind of things. Space, unlike water, it's empty. It's empty and it's cold. So whatever propulsion you plan to use in space, you need something that's going to be in a good amount and going to last you a while, because if it's just a push to send you in one direction, it's not that bad. So if you could use pulse ion, like they did in many projects at NASA, where they use a big dish and they basically use a pulse of current that creates a spark in the back of the dish, in the back of the ship, and it propel that ship forward. And it's not a bad idea, but the problem is, like, you need a nuclear engine to create such propulsion. And on a smaller scale vehicle, like the size of a car or an RV, you don't have the room to put such a nuclear fusion device. Plus, it's very dangerous. The goal is to use fossil fuel technology to drive a generators or create an FEG, a free energy generators. What I mean by free energy, I don't mean out of the thin air. I mean mechanical, electronical ways that you can recycle energy to have a continuous flow of energy. Basically, my design for FEGs is basically like a spare tank. You know, like on a car you have your gas tank. On certain vehicle you have a spare gas tank. Well, with a spare gas tank you can do twice as much mileage. So when you're using free energy, you're using a 12 volt generators and a 12 volt motor that turns each other's. And what you use a bank of batteries that a computer alternates, and it diverts the current from the generators in two ways. It diverts the current from the generator to your source, to your output, where you need to use that energy, and it drives the generators, and the other way, where it recharges the batteries. So you run one battery, you drain it, you go to the next, you refeed it, you go to the next, you refeed it, and so on. It's a circle. So basically you're just emptying the batteries one after the other very slowly, and you're refeeding them non-stop. The computer is just relaying the current to every one of them. That way you always have current. And that's one of my ideas to use for my system. As for the anti-gravity, many years ago, close to 21, 22 years ago, I was quite a crafty guy, and I was in science. And that's back in 1999. And it was my first days of being on the internet. And one time I saw this Quebec group who they wanted to make an anti-gravity device, an anti-gravity engine. And they were a bunch of students that had fundings, but they had no prior skill to making anything. So I basically told them that if you give me a plan, I can build anything. So they trust me with that, and they hired me to their school because I was unemployed at the time. And I went to their school and I built a project for them, and I assist in making the project. But the thing is, like, at the end, they brought the project home to one of their friends' home inside a small garage, like Doug Brown. You know, those crappy old wooden garage that could cut on fire with the smallest things? Well, it was looking like that. So basically, they attached what I made to a 500-pound flat piece of steel, 3 feet wide by 6 feet long, and for the 4 devices were on each corner. And they were used these huge wires that was feeding the current to the 4 engine, and it was in a kilovolt. They had a massive DC converter where they were taking AC current, amplifying it, and then inverting it to 12 volt, to DC. It wasn't 12 volt, but it was DC. And their calculation, they were young guys. You know, I was 24 years old, and they were 16, 17 years old, 18 years old kids. And they did what they did out of the best knowledge. Me, back in the days, I didn't know much about electricity compared to today. So they turned on the switch, and the device got hot. Those little engine that I made, they got hot. But they started to ionize the air to a point where they were creating plasma, and green plasma. And at one point they lift up. So they lift up. It lift off the 500-pound plate, and it hovered from the ground for 3 to 4 inches off the ground. We step on it and it created a load. And at one point, those transformator that they had started to overheating, and there was a big spark inside the device, and it went a back feed loop current. So the current went back to the current went back to the electrical line, and it went back all the way up to the electrical line, to the post, the electrical post, and it blew the transformator outside the house. So the entire neighborhood was blacked out because I don't know how many kilovolts it generated back, and it just blew up everything. But it did work. It did work. Today, when I look back at this design, I know what I would have to do to avoid that. And from watching a few Russian scientists, I think I know where I'm heading right now. But I'm not going to use an aluminum can like they did. They had the aluminum pipe to do the resonance chamber. And basically what they did is they created a magnetic speaker. When you have a speaker, it vibrates to the sound, making the sounds. Well, like basically what they did the same idea, but it was a fixed design, but with magnetic. So what they did, they concentrated a magnetic field in a narrow tube that was projecting the magnetic force outside, and with thus creating an anti-gravity engine. So instead of having propeller that pulls you up as it turns and moves the air, you have a magnetic field that push away, and no matter what direction you're putting. So it's like the Mueller flying car, but instead of using a propeller, you're using magnetic force. But I think that the bigger it would be, the more force it would generate. Brilliant fucker. This is why I hate Audi and Audi owner. They're so cocky, they think they can just drive as fast as they can and everywhere they can. Audi owner. Worst driver on this planet. I think back in the day it used to be the Corvette. You had a big ego when you buy a Corvette, it just amplifies your ego. But now it's the Audi. It's like everybody that drives an Audi, they have a huge, arrogant ego. It's just, to me, it just pisses me off. I turn them down so many times that to do work on their car, and then I say like, well, if it wasn't for an Audi or Volkswagen, I would probably work on your car. But with your attitude and that shitty car, I'm not gonna deal with you. And that was one of my big mistakes last season, last December, was accepting a job from somebody that owns an Audi. And it's not saying that the guy is not nice. The customer is very nice, very patient, but he has a huge ego. That just pisses me off. I told him last Sunday when I saw him, I say, I'm gonna like you 50% more if you buy a Jeep. And then he said like, oh, it's because you're gonna try to sell me things for my Jeep. I said, yes, I will. It's like, I would love to have a 6 or 7 project on the Jeep. Anyways, for now, that's what I'm gonna focus on. That and my other time travel IDs. So anyway, I wish you guys a good day. I'm reaching to work, and I have to put fuel again every goddamn week. And last week fuel was very shitty because I only did 274 kilometers with 2/5 of a gas tank. Usually with 2/5 of the gas tank I almost reach 300 plus kilometers, but that time around I only reach 274. That's just awful. Anyway, so have a good day everyone.